Greetings everyone, my name is Max, and today I will be joining you to examine yet another horrific case. In 2005, Diana Lovejoy and Greg Mulvihill connected via an internet dating platform. They bonded fast because they both lived distant from their families, and their relationship rapidly turned serious. They cohabitated in San Diego after moving in together. Diana was always passionate about fitness and sports. She participated in sports throughout high school and eventually developed into a competitive triathlete. Diana and Greg's relationship was greatly influenced by fitness and the outdoors because they both enjoyed being outside. In the 2000s, San Diego, California, became a prominent participant in the tech sector, and Diana and Greg were among those who seized the many career chances that presented themselves. They were both very successful and highly proficient in their positions. Diana was regarded as quite dependable by those with whom she worked. Diana and Greg decided to say, "I do," and start a new chapter in their lives as newlyweds in 2007, 2 years after they first met. They decided to spend their honeymoon in Costa Rica, where they could go to surf school. Diana and Greg loved spending time together in the early months of their marriage. They went on a great deal of adventures. The couple seized every opportunity that presented themselves and had a contagious zeal for life. Diana and Greg moved to Carlsbad, a stunning neighborhood north of San Diego, after getting married. This place had hills, lagoons, hiking routes, and secluded areas. Diana was especially drawn to the location and experienced a sense of happily ever after. As soon as she moved into her ideal house, she cherished being surrounded by the serene surroundings and gorgeous scenery Carlsbad has to offer. 3 years following their vow exchange, Diana and Greg's relationship started to take a turn for the worse. Diana thought she suffered from fibromyalgia, a chronic illness that affects millions of people globally. Widespread pain, tenderness, and soreness in certain body parts are the hallmarks of fibromyalgia. Although the precise etiology of fibromyalgia remains unknown, a number of factors may be involved in its development. Diana and Greg's marriage was severely hampered by Diana's fibromyalgia. Diana's determination to work hard and take on new challenges had always made her extremely active and motivated. She struggled to accept the restrictions placed on her by fibromyalgia, such as the requirement for less stress and rest. Their chemistry as a pair was severely strained by her abrupt shift in lifestyle. In order to help Diana decompress and forget about her illness, Greg accompanied her on a trip to Santa Cruz, California in 2011. Greg was Diana's devoted spouse, and he understood the toll that fibromyalgia was taking on her. Diana's health had been badly compromised by the disease, which left her with persistent muscle discomfort and exhaustion that greatly curtailed her vitality. She consequently had difficulties keeping her work. Diana eventually had to leave her career due to her persistent health struggles. She was able to devote more time and effort to controlling her fibromyalgia symptoms as a result of this choice. Diana started spending an increasing amount of time at her Carlsbad house. Being a mother was the only thing Diana could possibly want in life. Her goal was to love a child. Diana, regrettably, experienced multiple miscarriages. For Diana, losing these pregnancies was emotionally and physically taxing. Diana loved her 2 cats, Lanny and Turtle, dearly, despite the fact that she was childless. Turtle died one day after falling unwell. Greg bought Diana a kitten to assist her get through this difficult moment. The cat has her name, Taffy. Diana was really helped by Greg's gift. When Diana found out she was pregnant, it came as a shock after years of infertility struggles. Greg was ecstatic and eager to start a family. Diana believed that her dream of being a mother was slowly coming true, and she expressed the same sentiment. Diana gave birth to a child in September 2012. After the baby was born, Greg took some time off work to spend time with him. Greg found true enjoyment in his role as a father. He treasured each and every second he had with his son. Diana wished for her son's health and happiness at all times, but as time passed, she started to worry that her son would have a condition akin to her own fibromyalgia. Greg was certain that his son was well, and that there was no reason to be concerned. Diana was adamant that their son suffered from a disease, despite Greg and her having differing opinions about their baby's condition. After doing a great deal of research, she found a medication called guaifenesin, which is comparable to Mucinex and frequently used to address infections in the chest. There have been claims made by some that this medicine can aid with fibromyalgia symptoms. Diana was resolved to give her son huge doses of guaifenesin after learning about it. Greg, on the other hand, was adamantly against this notion because he thought it needless for her to try medicating their youngster. Growing discord in their marriage resulted from Diana and Greg's disagreement over how to handle their son's medical care. Diana and Greg's marriage became more tense and strained after Greg had to quit his job due to a shoulder injury. The amount of money coming into the household decreased because Greg was unemployed. Diana made the decision to acquire a sales job in order to augment the family's income due to this financial hardship. She also tried to make money with cooking films on the internet, where Greg was in charge of the camera. Regretfully, the intended outcomes were not achieved with this endeavor. Diana also appeared in advertisements for cat litter, although this did not result in a substantial increase in income. By the time Diana's baby turned 2, Greg and Diana were still at odds over their son's health and were always bickering. There was a big problem in their connection. Diana spoke to co-workers about how unsupportive and useless she thought Greg was. Diana had accused Greg of abuse, and in July of 2014, Greg found himself being questioned by a police officer. The officer stated that Diana had reported Greg's activities to the police on multiple occasions. These charges led to Greg's expulsion from the family home, but Diana and their son were permitted to remain. Diana disclosed the alleged attack she had suffered at the hands of Greg to a close friend. She disclosed that the event had happened when she was fast asleep. Diana claimed that the medication she was taking caused her to become lethargic, and when she began to regain awareness, she saw that Greg was groping her against her will. Diana also made other charges against Greg, claiming that he had abused their kids sexually. Diana's accusations prompted Child Protective Services to step in. Greg fiercely refuted Diana's claims, saying that Diana was only bringing them up because he didn't agree with her about his son's purported illness. Consequently, Greg requested custody of their son and filed for divorce from Diana. Investigators searched for proof that Greg had mistreated Diana and their child. A judge mandated that the youngster and Greg go through mental health assessments. Diana expressed her anger to friends, claiming that Greg's word was being used against hers. According to the evaluations, there was no proof that Greg was mistreating his son. Moreover, the investigators did not discover any proof that Greg had mistreated Diana. Greg was granted 50-50 custody of his kid once the case was withdrawn, and the accusations against him were found not to be true, which greatly infuriated Diana. Diana persisted in being their son's mother to the fullest, while Greg and Diana carried on with their divorce proceedings. In the drama that following, she was determined to move on from Greg and start a new, happy life. Diana lived in the house per the arrangement, and she also promised to reimburse Greg for his portion of the assets. Things between the split couple appeared to be going well by 2016. They had reached a mutually agreeable custody arrangement that gave them both equal access to their son. All that changed, though, on September 1st, 2016, when Greg's friend Jason Kovac called the Carlsbad Police Department. Jason stated that Greg was heavily bleeding and had been shot multiple times. Upon hearing about Greg's shooting through a 911 call from Jason Kovac, a patrolling Carlsbad police officer alerted dispatch. When the police arrived at the scene, they discovered Jason and Greg by the side of the road. Jason told the officer that the event had happened around 0.5 miles away from where they were. The officer assessed Greg's condition and determined that he would not survive if he waited for an ambulance. As a result, the officer made the decision to put Greg in the back of his car and drive him quickly to the hospital. Meanwhile, the SWAT team arrived on the site and started searching for the gunman shortly after the cop did. The squad searched everywhere for the shooter, but they were unable to identify him. Greg was being hurried into emergency surgery back at the hospital when the medical personnel noticed he had a gunshot wound to his chest. Greg survived the surgery, but in the hopes that he would wake up on his own, he was put on life support following. The detectives got the chance to speak with Greg's friend Jason Kovac, who was terrified and shocked when he was recovering in the hospital. But Jason looked ready to tell Greg what had transpired. Jason said that the night in question, Greg had called him asking for help. Greg had informed Jason that he had been contacted by a private investigator claiming to have crucial information and records that would support him throughout his custody and divorce from Diana. Even so, the private investigator provided Greg with a precise meeting time and location, but did not provide his name. Even though Greg was a little nervous about the call at first, his curiosity won out, and he asked Jason to go with him as a backup in case something went wrong. Jason easily consented to go along, worried about Greg's welfare. They took a child's baseball bat and a flashlight and armed themselves together. When Greg and Jason got to the spot the enigmatic caller had described, they discovered it was in a rural area. The fact that there were no streetlights and no moonlight to add to the difficulty was the complete darkness. On this specific night, there was a new moon, which happens when the Earth is positioned between the sun and the moon, obstructing most of the light from the sun. As a result, just a tiny bit of light could be seen on the moon, making it appear dull and murky in the sky. Jason claims that the caller told Greg that the documents will be tied to a big power pole in the shipment. Greg took a few steps toward the package and noticed the electricity pole. He carried a flashlight. Greg scanned the scene while moving the spotlight carefully in several directions. Jason watched in anticipation as Greg and the flashlight became fixated on something hidden in the bushes. Greg suddenly yelled, "Gun!" at that same moment. A few seconds later, there was a gunshot, and Greg and Jason had to start running for their life. Bullets flew past their heads as they ran in the direction of the car, according to Jason. Jason quickly dialed 911 after discovering that Greg had been shot when he got to the car. Jason led the detectives to the exact spot where the shooting occurred, even though he was unable to give them a detailed description of the perpetrator. The power pole where the caller gave Greg the order to accept the package caught the attention of the crime scene detectives during their inspection of the shooting scene. The detectives discovered an interesting artifact close to the pole, an angry bird's towel that had been perfectly squared up and folded. The investigators couldn't help but question whether the towel had been purposefully left there to lead Greg to believe that was the package he was instructed to get. Jason claimed to the investigators that he heard up to 6 gunshots at the scene, but they were unable to locate any weapon or bullet casings. The investigators came to the conclusion that the individual who shot Greg had much training and expertise shooting, since there was a dearth of forensic evidence. The investigators were concerned when they detected a strange smell while they were still searching the area where Greg was shot. It smelled like feces. One of the detectives found a towel and a clump of excrement. It looked like someone had cleaned up after using the restroom with this towel. The towel and the excrement sample were quickly saved by the investigators as possible pieces of evidence. After giving the objects meticulous packaging, they delivered them to the closest crime lab. The samples would be examined by forensic specialists in an effort to find any relevant clues or evidence regarding the shooting. It can take some time to get DNA evidence, though. The investigators had to move quickly in their hunt for a suspect, so they faced a dilemma during the potentially month-long wait for a DNA profile from the poo sample in the towel. The detectives persisted in trying to find the shooter of Greg in the interim. They carried out exhaustive investigations, looking through all of the available data and pursuing any clues they could have. Diana Lovejoy, Greg's estranged wife, was one topic of interest. After getting in touch with her, the investigators called Diana Lovejoy and asked to speak with her at the police station. During Diana's questioning, the detectives inquired about her knowledge of a private investigator who had communicated with her divorced husband, Greg, concerning divorce-related paperwork. Diana said she no longer talks to Greg and denies knowing anything about the situation. Diana also had a plausible explanation for why she was at home with her son when Greg was shot. After being questioned further, Diana said she could not think of any other information to provide and could not identify any possible culprits. Greg was kept on life support for a full day until he suddenly woke up and began to feel better. Detectives spoke with him when his condition had improved, inquiring as to whether Greg's estranged wife Diana might have been involved in the shooting. The investigators questioned Greg about her. Greg acknowledged their previous disagreements as well as their current divorce and custody dispute for their son. He did, however, voice his skepticism about Diana's ability to commit such a brutal deed. He claimed to have no adversaries and to be unaware of the potential perpetrators of the shooting. The phone number that was used to entice Greg to the isolated location where he was shot was obtained by the police early in the inquiry. When they looked closer, they saw that the phone was unclaimed and that it was using a pay-as-you-go plan. But the investigators were successful. After obtaining data from the provider, it was revealed that the cell phone was bought at Best Buy, close to Carlsbad. Detectives were on the case right away, and one of them called the manager of that specific Best Buy to see if they could find out when the cell phone was bought. The detective also inquired about getting a video of the person who made the purchase. The manager found the bits that matched the cell phone purchase time after spending hours sorting through hours of tape. The management then forwarded the video to the investigators. Despite the blurry quality of the clip, the investigators were able to identify Greg's estranged wife, Diana Lovejoy, in the video. Diana was immediately taken into custody during a traffic stop after this sighting established her as the main suspect in Greg's shooting. Diana maintained her innocence during her arrest. Diana was questioned by the investigator about her Best Buy purchases after she was taken into custody. Diana had purchased a pay-as-you-go cell phone, which was linked to the number that had enticed Greg to shoot him, as the detective was already aware. Diana, on the other hand, made up the story that she had bought a router. After that, the police showed Diana a still photo of the individual seen on CCTV when they bought the phone at Best Buy. Diana resembled the unidentified person's image exactly. When presented with this proof, Diana acknowledged purchasing the phone. After this, though, Diana's account of her role in Greg's shooting was altered. Diana bought a rifle and enrolled in classes at Iron Sights, a nearby shooting range, after telling detectives that she was terrified of Greg. Diana stated that she met Weldon McDavid, an instructor at Iron Sights who assisted her in learning how to shoot. Weldon was a weapons specialist, former Marine, and presenter of handgun instruction DVDs. Diana claimed that she had told Weldon about her split from Greg and the custody dispute. Their relationship developed into a passionate and close one as their friendship grew. Diana disclosed to the investigator that she and Weldon had come up with a scheme to intimidate Greg into stopping his harassment. Diana revealed that Weldon had given her a certain phone to buy, which they would thereafter use to entice Greg to a far-off place. Diana claimed that Weldon's only contribution to this scheme, rather than using physical force, was to threaten Greg. Diana acknowledged that she had picked up and driven Weldon to the location, but she asked what was going on as she heard police sirens approaching from a distance. At that moment, Weldon told her that Greg had allegedly made violent gestures toward him, therefore he had to shoot Greg in self-defense. She insisted that she had never asked Greg to use violence against her and denied any role in the shooting. After Diana came clean about her role in Greg's ordeal, she was accused of both attempted and conspiratorial murder. Luckily, Greg's bullet wound to the chest healed quickly, and he was discharged from the hospital not long after. Even with the positive news, though, some were appalled when they learned of Diana's role as Greg's separated wife. Police located Weldon McDavid and brought him into the police station to be questioned. Weldon was questioned by the detective regarding his relationship with Diana and his whereabouts the night Greg was shot. Weldon claims that he was at home the night of the incident, around 30 minutes away from Carlsbad. The police told Weldon during the interview that they were hoping to obtain a sample of his DNA. Weldon looked apprehensive when they asked him, obviously sensing they were onto something. Weldon was questioned by the detectives about the possibility that his DNA was left at the crime site. Weldon pretended to be surprised at that time, saying he had just remembered something. Weldon told the cops that Greg had gone on a run the night before he was shot, having had dinner of Mexican food. He said that the meal had upset his stomach, causing him to pull over and use the dirt road restroom. Weldon McDavid's home was searched by the detectives after they secured a search warrant, with special attention paid to the garage and any hidden spaces. When they found a strange object in the rafters, their efforts paid off. It was discovered to be a rifle upon closer inspection, replete with 6 spent cartridge casings and a live round. The round casings that Jason Cack reported hearing 6 gunshots matched his story. Weldon was then taken into custody on suspicion of trying to kill someone and planning to kill someone. Following their examination of Weldon's home, the police were granted a search warrant to examine Diana Lovejoy's residence. A strange search history was discovered by the cops when they were going through Diana's computer. Diana had looked up the word "new moon," which caught their attention. After investigating more further, the investigators discovered that September 1st, the evening Greg was shot, coincided with "I did under a fresh moon." This was a particularly important discovery because young moons had relatively little ambient light. Diana had deliberate knowledge of the shooting, the detectives concluded after closely examining her search history. Her fascination with new moons indicated that she planned to take advantage of the lack of ambient light to help her spouse get killed. The detectives' conclusions confirmed their suspicion that Diana was a key player in the shooting's planning. The investigators found out during the inquiry that Diana had a reason for killing Greg. They discovered that Diana had to give Greg $120,000 in order to receive the house as part of the divorce settlements. It's possible that Diana recognized she wouldn't have time to make the payment. She might have concluded, therefore, that getting rid of Greg would be simpler than asking for the debt. October 2017 saw the start of Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid's trial. Taking the stand, Weldon stated that he had no intention of shooting Greg. He claimed that his only goal was to frighten him. Weldon, a competent marksman, claimed that if he had wanted to kill Greg, he would have. But the scenario changed when he heard either Jason or Greg yell, "I got a gun." But the state gave the court a different explanation. They argued that because Greg had shined a flashlight in his eyes, confusing Weldon, Weldon was unable to shoot and kill Greg. Weldon had been sitting in the dark for a while, which had impaired his sense of orientation because there wasn't much moonlight because of the new moon. Greg's life was finally spared by this situation. Diana Lovejoy and Weldon McDavid were found guilty by the jury of attempted murder and conspiring to commit murder. Diana broke down when she heard the verdict, but the state believes she staged it. Diana received a sentence of 26 years to life, while Weldon received a sentence of 50 years to life. Both of them continued to claim innocence.